So despite being somebody who actually enjoys the Green Lanterns quite a bit, I don't tend to talk about them that much, in large part because I've had repeated negative experiences with Harold fans. Ask me sometime about the dude who tried to frame me for a death threat he sent himself. Now, an important place to start is that when the characters were first created, only one of them was a former armed forces member, and that was Harold, and none of them were cops. It's also worth noting that even with Hal, right up until the Jeff Johns run, him being former Air Force wasn't particularly important to his characterization, and more had to do with the fact that at the time he was created, roughly half of adult men had at one point served in the armed forces due to the draft in World War II, Vietnam, so on and so forth. Because right, we've got Guy. Guy wasn't originally a cop. Guy Gardner was a social worker who then went on to be a special needs teacher. He was not a cop. John Stewart was an architect, once again, not in the armed forces. Kyle Rayner was a freelance comic book artist. Simon Baz, once again, not a cop, not a military member. He was a street racer without a solid job. Jess, once again, not worked in the armed forces. Kelly is 14 years old and, to my knowledge, has not had an official job at all. Her label as a Green Lantern is dubious, despite her moniker being Teen Lantern. And I'll agree that I don't think that they should all have the backstory of cops or armed forces. And I do agree that it is an issue when every single Green Lantern has a military or cop background. However, the solution to that isn't to take that away or get rid of Joe, because Joe's position as former armed forces, as a former cop who was kicked out of the force for trying to speak up for equality and realising how corrupt and damaged that system is absolutely not what we should be doing. The solution is to bring back diversity of the post-crisis identities instead of erasing what is one of the most interesting modern Green Lantern stories in Far Sector. There's also the discussion, of course, about the fact that people are really annoyed that there's too many human lanterns and then aren't bothered to engage in the fact that Joe's story actually doesn't engage in Earth for the vast majority either. I agree we can probably retire or move on several of the lanterns and perhaps send some of them to different calls, but I don't see why Joe, whose story is tied in heavily specifically to her being a Green Lantern and specifically into her X-Force identity, is the one who has to go.